The tall glass towers of the Galactic Council building stretched up into the purple sky of Centauri Prime. Inside the main chamber, hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows, their voices creating a low buzz of conversation. The air smelled of different worlds and different species all gathered to discuss the business of the galaxy. Ambassador Lisa Martinez walked slowly toward the center platform. Her black shoes clicked on the smooth floor as she carried her datapad in one hand. She was a small woman compared to most of the aliens around her, but she moved with quiet confidence. The human section was near the back of the chamber, a small group of 20 people who seemed almost lost among the massive forms of the other species. The Kralix delegation dominated the front rows. Each one stood nearly 10 feet tall, their bodies covered in hard crystal plates that caught the light and threw it back in sharp angles. When they moved, their armor made clicking sounds like breaking glass. Their leader, Hegemon Vextar, watched the human ambassador with 4 black eyes that showed nothing but contempt. Behind them sat the Vorthak Empire representatives. These beings looked like giant lizards that had learned to walk upright. Their scales were dark green and black, and their long tails swept the floor behind their chairs. Grand Admiral Sethrak hissed softly as he spoke to his aide, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Lisa reached the speaking platform and placed her datapad on the podium. She looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at her. Most showed boredom or mild interest. Some showed open dislike. None showed fear. Honored members of the council, Lisa began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. The human colonies request permission to establish 3 new research stations in the Outer Rim territories. A wave of clicking came from the Kralix section. Several of the crystal beings leaned forward to whisper to each other, their voices making sounds like wind chimes in a storm. Lisa continued without showing any reaction to their noise. These stations will focus on agricultural development and mineral surveys. We believe these peaceful activities will benefit not only humanity, but all council members through shared research and trade opportunities. Hegemon Vextar stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber. When he spoke, his voice came out like grinding stones. The humans ask for more space. They always ask. They never take. This is why they remain weak. Laughter came from several sections of the chamber. The sound was not pleasant, mixing the harsh barks of the Kralix with the hissing of the Vorthak and the electronic chirps of a dozen other species. Lisa stood quietly and waited for the noise to die down. She had heard this kind of talk for years. The galaxy saw humanity as soft and harmless. They thought humans were useful only for solving disputes between other species because humans were too weak to be a threat to anyone. Far from the council, chambers on the dark side of Earth's moon, General Patricia Hayes stood in front of a massive wall screen. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of small dots scattered across it. Each dot was marked with human symbols and numbers. "How many ships do we have in position now?" she asked the man standing beside her. Admiral Kevin Brooks checked his tablet. 237 vessels are currently on station. The aliens think they're cargo ships and research vessels. They have no idea what those ships really carry. Patricia nodded. She was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was simple and black, with no decorations except for a small Earth symbol on the collar. She had been planning for this day for 15 years. "And the colonies?" she asked. "All 43 research stations are fully operational. Each one has enough firepower to take out a battleship. The aliens think we're growing vegetables and studying rocks." On the screen, the dots pulsed softly with green light. Each one represented a human outpost that the galaxy believed was harmless. Each one was actually a military base disguised as something peaceful. Back in the council chamber, Lisa was fielding questions from the various species. Most were routine, the same questions humans always answered about their peaceful intentions and their desire to help solve galactic problems. A Vorthak representative raised his clawed hand. "These research stations," he hissed, "they will be defended?" "Only with standard civilian security measures," Lisa replied smoothly. "As you know, humanity has no significant military presence outside our home system. We rely on the Council's protection and the goodwill of our neighbors. This brought more laughter, especially from the Kralik section. They found the idea of protecting humans amusing. The crystal beings had been raiding human trade routes for months, taking cargo and sometimes entire ships. The humans always complained through diplomatic channels but never fought back. What the Kraliks didn't know was that every raid was carefully recorded. Every stolen ship contained tracking devices. Every captured human crew member carried implants that transmitted their location back to Earth. The aliens thought they were stealing from sheep. They were actually being watched by wolves. In the Luna Command Center, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was reviewing the latest intelligence reports. She was officially the head of the Human Colonial Research Division. Unofficially, she was one of the galaxy's most dangerous military analysts. The Kraliks have taken another cargo ship, she reported to General Hayes. The crew is alive and being held at their base in the Rigel system. How many does that make? Patricia asked. 47 ships, 312 crew members. All alive, all transmitting location data. Patricia smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Good. When the time comes, we'll know exactly where to find them. The meeting in the council chamber was winding down. Lisa had answered all the questions and provided all the required documentation. The vote would come later, but she knew it would pass. The aliens always approved human requests because they saw no threat in allowing humans to spread across the galaxy. As she gathered her papers, Hegemon Vextar approached the platform. Up close, he was even more intimidating, his crystal armor reflecting the chamber lights like a broken mirror. Your people are fortunate, he said in his grinding voice. The council protects you because you are useful. But usefulness can end. Remember that, little human. Lisa looked up at the massive alien without flinching. I'll remember, she said quietly. Thank you for the reminder. The hegemon laughed, a sound like glass breaking, and walked away. He didn't see the look in Lisa's eyes as she watched him go. It was the same look a cat might give a mouse, just before the pounce. 3 days later, the council approved the human request by a vote of 812 to 37. The humans were granted permission to build their research stations. The galaxy congratulated itself on its tolerance and wisdom in helping the peaceful species expand their harmless activities. None of them noticed that the 3 new locations were positioned at critical hyperspace junction points. None of them realized that these stations would give humanity control over the main trade routes between the galaxy's major powers. The trap was being set, piece by piece, with the willing cooperation of the prey. The first message came at 3 in the morning, Earth time. Captain Maria Santos was drinking coffee in her quarters aboard the cargo ship New California when her communication panel started flashing red. She set down her cup and activated the emergency channel. This is Kepler 442b calling any human vessel. The voice was broken and filled with static. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Multiple Kralik ships. They're not taking prisoners. Maria grabbed her headset and tried to respond, but the signal cut to dead air. She tried again, switching through different frequencies, but found only silence. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was home to 8,000 people. Now there was nothing. She activated her ship's emergency beacon and sent the distress report to Earth. Then she changed course toward the Kepler system, knowing she would arrive too late to help anyone. On Earth, President William Turner was pulled from his bed at 4 in the morning. He walked quickly through the corridors of the underground command center, still wearing his sleeping clothes under a hastily thrown-on coat. The duty officer met him at the door to the war room. Sir, we've lost contact with Kepler 442b. Captain Santos is en route but estimates she won't arrive for 6 hours. Turner entered the war room where General Hayes and Admiral Brooks were already waiting. The main screen showed the last known position of the colony, a small dot in space that was now probably nothing but debris. How many people? Turner asked. 8,412, Admiral Brooks replied, including 300 children. Turner sat down hard in his chair. For 30 years, humanity had played the role of the galaxy's peacemakers. They had swallowed insults, ignored raids on their trade ships, and smiled while other species treated them like servants. But this was different. This was mass murder. Options? He asked. General Hayes activated a holographic display that filled the room with points of light. We have 43 hidden military stations positioned throughout the galaxy. Each one is disguised as a research facility or mining operation. We have 237 ships that appear to be civilian but are actually warships. How long to mobilize? 6 hours for the first wave, 12 hours for full deployment. Turner stared at the display. Those lights represented 15 years of secret preparation, ships built in hidden shipyards, weapons developed in laboratories that officially didn't exist, soldiers trained for a war that was supposed to never happen. And the diplomatic option? Admiral Brooks shook his head. Sir, intelligence suggests this wasn't random. The Kralix, Vorthak, and 3 smaller powers have been planning to divide human space between them. They think we're too weak to stop them. 6 hours later, Captain Santos arrived at what used to be Kepler 442b. The mining colony was gone. In its place was a field of twisted metal and cooling plasma. Her ship's sensors detected no life signs, no survivors, nothing but the remains of a civilization that had been wiped out in minutes. She activated her recording equipment and began documenting the destruction. The attack had been thorough and brutal. The colonists hadn't even had time to reach their emergency shelters. But Santos found something else in the debris field. Kralix weapon signatures were everywhere, but there were also signs of something worse. Her medical officer, Dr. Ryan Walsh, analyzed the biological residue they collected from the wreckage. Captain, he said, his voice tight with disgust. They didn't just kill the colonists, they harvested them. There are traces of human genetic material that's been processed for integration into Kralix bioforms. Santos felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Kralix weren't just expanding their territory, they were using humans as raw material for their war machines. She sent her report back to Earth and waited for orders. They came within an hour, encrypted and brief. Begin Phase 1 deployment. Authorization code. Silent Thunder. Santos smiled for the first time since receiving the distress call. She walked to her ship's cargo bay and placed her hand on a concealed scanner. The scanner read her palm print and retinal pattern, then activated. The cargo bay began to change. False walls slid away to reveal weapon systems that had been hidden for years. The New California shed its disguise like a snake shedding its skin. Where there had been a simple cargo vessel, now there was a warship that could destroy anything the Kralix had ever built. Similar transformations were happening across the galaxy. On the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Dr. Elena Rodriguez received the same authorization code. She entered her laboratory and spoke a single word to the computer. Thunder. The laboratory walls folded back to reveal a command center that would have impressed any military strategist. Screens showed the positions of every human ship and station in the galaxy. Communication arrays that had been disguised as scientific equipment came online, connecting the scattered human forces into a single coordinated network. This is control to all Thunder units. Rodriguez spoke into her headset. Phase 1 is authorized. Repeat, Phase 1 is authorized. Across human space, captains and commanders who had been waiting for years finally received the orders they had trained for. The merchant captain John Mitchell, hauling grain to the Vorthak colonies, sealed his cargo holds and activated the plasma cannons hidden beneath his ship's hull. Commander Lisa Park, running a mining operation in the asteroid belt, powered up the missile batteries that had been built into the mining equipment. In the Rigel system, where the Kralix had their forward operating base, the human research ship Endeavour received its orders. The ship's captain, Robert Hayes, had been watching the Kralix base for 2 years, officially studying solar radiation patterns. In reality, he had been mapping every defensive system and recording every ship movement. Now, he transmitted that intelligence to Earth and prepared his ship for combat. The Endeavour had been designed to look like a peaceful science vessel, but hidden within its hull were weapons that could level cities. Back on Earth, President Turner addressed the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the senior command personnel who had been secretly preparing for this day. For 30 years we have been the galaxy's diplomats, he said. We have mediated their conflicts, solved their problems, and helped them find peaceful solutions to their disputes. In return, they have treated us like servants and prey. He paused and looked around the room at the faces of men and women who had dedicated their careers to this moment. Today, the Kralix Empire murdered 8,000 of our people and harvested their bodies for their war machines. They did this because they believe we are weak. They believe we will file a diplomatic protest and do nothing else. Turner activated the main display, showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. The aliens had allowed human ships to spread everywhere, never realizing that each one was a potential weapon. They are wrong, Turner continued. We are not weak, we are patient. There is a difference, and they are about to learn what that difference means. General Hayes stepped forward. Sir, all units report ready for deployment. We can begin operations within the hour. Turner nodded. Then let's teach the galaxy what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Begin the operation. The orders went out across space at the speed of light. In hundreds of systems, human ships that had been playing the role of peaceful traders and researchers began to reveal their true nature. The galaxy's most patient predators were finally showing their teeth. The war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what was coming for them. The attack began at exactly 3 a.m, Universal Standard Time, across 17 different star systems. Captain Maria Santos watched her tactical display light up with targets as the New California dropped out of hyperspace near the Kralix forward base at Rigel 7. The space station hung in the darkness like a giant crystal spider, its arms stretching out for miles in every direction. All weapon systems online, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Danny Cole. Missile batteries loaded and ready. Santos had been waiting 2 years for this moment. The Kralix had used this base to launch raids against human cargo ships. They had tortured captured crews here. And according to the intelligence reports, this was where they processed human genetic material for their bioweapons. Fire, she said quietly. The New California unleashed hell. Missiles streaked across space like angry stars, each one guided by targeting computers that had been tracking Kralix movements for months. The station's shields flared and died under the assault. Secondary explosions rippled along the crystal, structure as weapon storage areas detonated. Hegemon Vextar was in his command center when the first missiles hit. The impact threw him against a wall as his crystal armor rang like a bell. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as his officers scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Report, he snarled, picking himself up from the floor. Multiple impacts on sections 7 through 12, his aide stammered. Shields are down, we're reading massive hull breaches. What attacked us? Where did they come from? The aide checked his instruments with shaking hands. Sir, it appears to be a human cargo vessel. Vexitar's 4 eyes focused on the display screen. There, hanging in space like a predator over its kill, was a ship he recognized. The New California had docked at his station dozens of times, carrying grain and manufactured goods. The captain had always been polite and respectful, paying her docking fees without complaint. Now that same ship was tearing his base apart with weapons that shouldn't exist. Impossible, he whispered. Humans don't have weapons like this. The New California fired again. This time the missiles targeted the station's reactor core. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human ships revealed their true nature. In the Wolf 359 system, Commander Robert Hayes led an assault on the Kralix shipyards where human prisoners had been experimented on. His task force of 6 ships had been posing as a mineral survey expedition for 18 months. The Kralix defenders scrambled to respond, but their commanders couldn't understand what they were facing. These weren't the weak, peaceful humans they knew. These ships moved with military precision and fought with a savage efficiency that terrified the crystal beings. Hayes watched through his view screen as the shipyard's defensive platforms exploded one by one. Each platform had been mapped and analyzed during his months of surveying. His gunners knew exactly where to hit for maximum damage. Target the prisoner holding facilities first, he ordered. I want those buildings intact. His weapons officer nodded and adjusted the targeting. The rescue of human prisoners was the primary objective. Everything else was just destruction. On the far side of the galaxy, Admiral Kevin Brooks commanded the operation from the disguised battleship Terra Nova. The ship had spent 5 years pretending to be the peaceful exploration vessel Endeavour, visiting dozens of alien worlds and making friends with local commanders. Those friendships were about to be tested. Communications, open a channel to all human units, Brooks ordered. Channel open, sir. This is Admiral Brooks to all Thunder units. Phase 1 targets are being engaged. All captains are authorized to use maximum force. Show them what humans do to those who murder our children. The response came back from dozens of ships across the galaxy, cargo vessels that had been hauling food to alien colonies, research ships that had been studying distant stars, mining platforms that had been quietly extracting asteroids. All of them were now revealing weapons that the aliens never knew existed. In the Vorthak home system, the human freighter Boston T was making its regular delivery to the orbital trading station. Captain Lisa Park had been running this route for 3 years, building relationships with the reptilian merchants who bought human agricultural products. As she approached the docking bay, her ship's cargo holds opened, but instead of grain containers, missile launchers emerged from concealed compartments. The trading station's traffic control officer was still welcoming her over the radio when the first salvo hit. The Vorthak had never seen anything like it. Their trading station, which had no military defenses because it was in their home system, was destroyed in minutes. Captain Park's ship then turned toward the planet below and began targeting the military bases that protected the Vorthak capital. Grand. Admiral Sethrak received the first reports in his private chambers on the planet's surface. His aide burst in without knocking, something that would normally result in execution. Admiral, we're under attack. Multiple human ships have engaged our forces throughout the system. Sethrak's forked tongue flicked out as he processed this information. Human ships? You mean cargo vessels? Sir, these aren't cargo vessels. They're warships. Heavily armed warships that have been disguised as civilian craft. The Admiral's eyes narrowed to slits. How many ships? We count at least 40 in our system alone. Reports are coming in from 12 other systems. Admiral, the humans have been lying to us. They've been building a fleet and positioning it, right under our noses. Sethrak felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. The Vorthak Empire had been planning to divide human space with the Kraliks and other allies. They had assumed the humans would offer only token resistance. Instead, the humans had been preparing for war while smiling and shaking hands with their enemies. Back at the Galactic Council building on Centauri Prime, Ambassador Lisa Martinez was walking through the corridors when the first reports arrived. Alien delegates were running back and forth, shouting in their various languages as news of the human attacks spread. She found a quiet alcove and activated her secure communicator. This is Martinez to Earth Command. Go ahead, Ambassador. The aliens are starting to panic. How are our operations proceeding? Better than expected. We've destroyed or damaged 70% of Phase 1 targets. Enemy losses are catastrophic. Martinez smiled. She had spent years in these halls, listening to aliens joke about human weakness. She had endured their condescension and their threats with patience that they mistook for fear. What are my instructions? Maintain your position, let them come to you. When they ask for negotiations, tell them the terms. Understood. Martinez closed the channel and walked back into the main corridor. Alien beings rushed past her, some weeping, others shouting orders into communication devices. None of them seemed to notice the small human woman who watched them with calm eyes. In his crystal palace on the Kralik's homeworld, Hegemon Prime Zaltek received reports that grew worse with each passing hour. Dozens of his military installations were gone, his forward fleets were scattered or destroyed, and the reports all said the same impossible thing. The humans had done this. He activated his communication array and sent a priority message to the Biao Galactic Council. This is Hegemon Prime Zalthek to the Council. The humans have launched an unprovoked attack on Kralik's territory. We demand immediate intervention and the prosecution of the human leadership for war crimes. The reply came back within minutes, but it wasn't from the Council. It was from Admiral Brooks, broadcast on all frequencies for the galaxy to hear. This is Admiral Kevin Brooks of the Human Defense Force. The Kralik's Empire murdered 8,000 human civilians and harvested their genetic material for biological weapons. We consider this an act of genocide. Our response is proportional and will continue until the Kralix leadership surrenders unconditionally. The transmission cut off, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. The peaceful, diplomatic humans had just announced their intention to wage total war against one of the galaxy's major powers. And from the reports flooding in from across known space, it appeared they had the means to do it. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Emergency sessions had been called every day for a week as reports poured in from across the galaxy. Species that had dominated space for centuries were begging for help as human fleets systematically destroyed their military forces. Ambassador Lisa Martinez sat calmly in the human section, watching the panic around her. The Kralix delegation was down to 3 members. The rest had either fled home to defend their territory or died when human forces hit their command centers. Hegemon Prime Zalthek had not been seen since his homeworld's orbital defenses were destroyed 2 days ago. The Vorthak representatives were arguing loudly with the Centaurian mediators, their hissing voices demanding immediate action against the human aggression. Grand Admiral Sethrak stood at the central podium, his scales dark with rage. "The humans have violated every treaty of civilized warfare," he snarled. "They attack without warning. They destroy civilian targets. They refuse all attempts at negotiation." Martinez stood up slowly. The chamber fell silent as she walked to the speaker's platform. She placed her hands on the podium and looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. "The human colonies remember," she said, quietly. "We remember every raid on our cargo ships. We remember every crew member who disappeared. We remember the 8,000 civilians who were murdered and harvested at Kepler 442b. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's sound system, but there was no anger in it. She spoke like someone reading a grocery list. "You called us weak because we preferred diplomacy to violence. You were wrong. We use diplomacy because we are strong enough to choose when to fight." Sethrak slammed his clawed hand on his podium. "You speak of strength while your ships attack defenseless stations." Martinez smiled, and the expression was colder than space itself. "Defenseless. Admiral, your empire has been building weapons for war against humanity for 3 years. We have complete records of your military preparations. Would you like me to share them with the Council?" The Vorthak Admiral's eyes widened. Behind him, his aides were whispering urgently into their communication devices. "We know about the secret alliance between the Kralix, Vorthak, and Zalonian empires," Martinez continued. "We know about your plans to divide human space between you. We know about the biological weapons programs using human genetic material. We know because we have been watching you while you thought we were harmless." She activated her datapad, and the chamber's main screen lit up with documents and images. Battle plans with human territories marked for conquest. Research files showing experiments on captured human prisoners. Communications between alien leaders discussing the best ways to eliminate the human species. "You planned genocide," Martinez said simply. "We planned survival. Guess which plan was better?" On the far side of the galaxy, Captain Maria Santos was leading her battle group through what used to be Kralix space. The crystal beings had tried to make a stand at their secondary command center, but human intelligence was too good and human weapons were too advanced. Her ships moved through the debris field where a Kralix fleet had tried to stop them. The enemy vessels had been beautiful once, their crystal hulls catching starlight like jewels. Now they were broken fragments drifting in the darkness. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a surrender signal from the planet below." Santos looked at her tactical display. The planet held 3 million Kralix civilians and the remains of their government. Her orders were clear. "Accept surrenders but maintain overwhelming force. Open a channel," she ordered. The face that appeared on her screen was that of a young Kralix female, her crystal features cracked with stress. "This is Administrator Velnara of Kralix Prime. We surrender unconditionally to human forces. Please do not destroy our cities." Santos studied the alien's face. 3 weeks ago, this species had been laughing at human weakness. Now they were begging for mercy. "Your surrender is accepted," Santos replied. All military forces will lay down their weapons. All government officials will report to human administrators within 6 hours. Any resistance will be met with immediate force. The transmission ended and Santos turned to her tactical officer. Deploy the occupation forces. I want complete control of this system within 12 hours. Meanwhile, Admiral Kevin Brooks was coordinating the largest military operation in galactic history from his command ship. The Terra Nova hung in space near what used to be the Vorthak Empire's main shipyard. The facility was now a cloud of expanding gas and metal fragments. Status report, he ordered. His aide, Commander Rachel Stone, consulted her datapad. Kralix resistance has collapsed. 80% of their territory is under our control. The Vorthak Empire has lost 60% of its fleet and is retreating to their core systems. The Zolonian Alliance is requesting immediate peace talks. Brooks nodded. The operation was proceeding better than their most optimistic projections. 30 years of careful planning and preparation were paying off in ways that even he hadn't expected. What about civilian casualties? He asked. Minimal, sir. Our intelligence was accurate enough to target only military installations and government facilities. Civilian populations are largely intact. This had been one of humanity's key advantages. While the aliens had seen them as weak diplomats, the humans had been studying their enemies with scientific precision. Every important military base had been mapped. Every government official had been identified. Every weakness had been cataloged and filed away for future use. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was analyzing the intelligence hall from her command center on Luna. The amount of information they had captured from alien systems was staggering. Military codes, research data, economic records, and communication logs that revealed the true scope of the anti-human conspiracy. General, she said to Patricia Hayes, you need to see this. She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy with trade routes highlighted in different colors. The aliens weren't just planning to attack us, they were planning to enslave us. Look at these economic projections. The display showed detailed plans for using human labor in alien industries. Humans would be bred like livestock to provide workers for dangerous mining operations and agricultural projects. The documents discussed human intelligence and adaptability as valuable resources to be exploited. General Hayes read through the files with growing disgust. How long have they been planning this? At least 20 years, maybe longer. They've been studying us just as carefully as we've been studying them. The difference is that they underestimated what they were dealing with. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the session was winding down. Most of the alien delegates had fled to defend their home systems or were trying to negotiate separate peace deals with human forces. Only a few species remained neutral, and they were carefully avoiding taking any position that might anger the humans. Martinez gathered her papers and prepared to leave the platform. As she walked past the Vorthak section, Grand Admiral Sethrak stepped into her path. This isn't over, he hissed quietly. My people have fought for 1,000 years. We will not surrender to jumped-up primates. Martinez stopped and looked up at the towering reptilian. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, she smiled. Admiral, your empire had 800 ships 3 weeks ago. This morning our count shows you have 63 vessels remaining. Your main shipyards are destroyed. Your supply lines are cut. Your allies have abandoned you. She stepped closer, and despite being half his size, Sethrak backed away. You can keep fighting if you want, she continued. But understand that humans are very good at learning from their enemies. Every tactic you use against us will be studied, improved, and used against you. Every weapon you deploy will be captured and reverse engineered. Every strategy you develop will be anticipated and countered. She paused and let that sink in. The question isn't whether you can defeat us, Admiral. The question is whether your species will still exist when this war is over. Choose carefully. With that, she walked away, leaving the Grand Admiral staring after her with something that might have been fear beginning to show in his reptilian eyes. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between being peaceful and being weak, and for many species that lesson was coming too late. 6 months after the first strike, the galaxy looked like a different place. The Kralix hegemony no longer existed as an independent power. Their crystal cities were occupied by human peacekeeping forces, and their surviving population was being relocated to supervised colonies. The creatures who had once laughed at human weakness now worked under human oversight to rebuild the worlds they had damaged. President William Turner stood on the observation deck of the new human command station, orbiting Earth. The massive structure had been built in secret over 15 years, disguised as a civilian space habitat. Now it served as the headquarters for humanity's expanding galactic empire. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the construction yards where captured alien technology was being studied and improved. Kralix crystal-forming techniques were being combined with human engineering to create new types of starship hulls. Vorthak energy systems were being redesigned for human use. Every piece of alien science was being absorbed and made better. "The surrender ceremonies are ready to begin, sir," his aide informed him. Turner nodded and walked to the main conference room. Representatives from 12 different species were waiting there, all of them preparing to formally submit to human authority. The room was designed to make an impression, with Earth visible through the massive viewport behind the negotiating table. Ambassador Lisa Martinez entered first, followed by the defeated alien leaders. Grand Admiral Sethrak of the Vorthak Empire looked older than his reptilian features should have allowed. The scales around his eyes were faded and dull, and his movements were slow with defeat. Behind him came what remained of the Kralix leadership. Administrator Velnara still bore cracks in her crystal skin from the stress of watching her civilization collapse. The other species had similar looks of exhaustion and despair. Turner took his seat at the head of the table and looked at each alien representative in turn. 6 months ago, these beings had been planning to divide humanity between them like a meal. Now they were here to beg for terms that would let their species survive. "The Galactic Council is dissolved," Turner began, "without ceremony. In its place, we establish the Human Colonial Authority. All former council territories will be administered by human governors." Sethrak shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What of our home systems, our people? Your people will be relocated to designated areas where they can be properly supervised. Your home systems will be administered by human colonial governors. You will have representation in local matters, but all major decisions will be made by human authority." The Vorthak Admiral's tongue flicked out nervously. "And if we refuse these terms?" Turner activated a holographic display that showed the current military situation. Human fleets controlled every major hyperspace route in the galaxy. Human forces occupied the key systems of every major power. Human weapons platforms guarded every important trade center. "Admiral, you no longer have the ability to refuse anything. You can accept these terms and live under human rule, or you can continue to resist and face extinction. Those are your only choices." Captain Maria Santos had been promoted to Admiral, and now commanded the largest human fleet in galactic history. Her flagship, the newly constructed Earth's Vengeance, was 3 times the size of any vessel the aliens had ever built. It incorporated the best technology from a dozen different species, all improved by human engineering. She was currently overseeing the integration of former Kralix territory into the Human Colonial Authority. The crystal beings had been excellent miners and engineers, skills that would be useful under proper supervision. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim. Pirates are attacking the new human colony on Kepler 501. Santos smiled grimly. Some species still hadn't learned the lesson. "How many ships?" "Intelligence reports a fleet of 30 vessels from various species. They think they can prey on what they assume is a defenseless human settlement. Dispatch the 5th Fleet to handle it. Make sure there are survivors to spread the word about what happens to those who attack human colonies." The galaxy was learning that the new human empire was very different from the old council system. Under the aliens, piracy and raids had been common because the council was too divided to respond effectively. Under human rule, any attack on human interests brought swift and overwhelming retaliation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been appointed as the first director of galactic intelligence. Her job was to make sure that humanity never again faced a surprise threat, like the alien conspiracy that had led to this war. "General Hayes," she reported to her superior, We've completed the analysis. Of all captured alien intelligence files, the scope of their anti-human planning was even larger than we initially thought. She activated a presentation that showed the true extent of the alien conspiracy. 17 different species were involved in planning humanity's enslavement, or extermination. They had detailed studies of human biology, psychology, and social structures. They knew exactly how to break us as a civilization. General Hayes studied the data with cold eyes. Recommendations? Complete integration of all. Former alien territories under direct human control. No species that participated in the conspiracy can be trusted with self-governance. They had 20 years to make different choices, and they chose genocide. In the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber, now renamed the Human Colonial Assembly, representatives from the surviving alien species gathered for their first session under human authority. The chamber had been redesigned with human aesthetics in mind. The hierarchical seating arrangement that had once emphasized alien superiority was replaced with a more democratic layout, though the meaning was clear. Humans sat at the head table, and everyone else sat below them. Ambassador Martinez, now promoted to colonial administrator, addressed the assembly. The new colonial system will provide representation for all species based on their contribution to galactic stability and prosperity. Species that demonstrate loyalty and cooperation will be granted increased autonomy. Those that resist will find their privileges reduced. The alien representatives listened in silence. They had learned that arguing with human authority was pointless. The humans had proven that they could destroy any opposition with ease. One of the Zolonian delegates, an insect-like being named Coordinator Zax, raised a clawed hand. Administrator Martinez, what assurance do our people have that humans will not treat us as some of us treated human colonies? Martinez considered the question carefully. It was the same question that had been asked many times in the past months. Coordinator, humanity spent 30 years trying to find peaceful solutions to galactic conflicts. We mediated disputes, negotiated treaties, and tried to build a system where all species could coexist. The galaxy's response was to plan our extermination. She paused and looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching her. The difference between humans and the previous galactic powers is that we learned from your mistakes. We studied how you maintained control through fear and division. We observed how you treated weaker species. We took notes. The chamber was completely silent now. We will not repeat your errors. Obedient populations will be treated well. Rebellious ones will be relocated or removed. The choice, as always, is yours. In the years that followed, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of the human golden age. The galaxy's most dangerous predators had revealed themselves at last, and they ruled with the competence that came from decades of careful observation and planning. Trade flourished under human protection. Piracy virtually disappeared as criminals learned that attacking any ship brought swift retribution. Scientific advancement accelerated as human researchers gained access to the combined knowledge of dozens of species. The aliens had been right about one thing. Humans were peaceful. They had simply been wrong about what that peace would cost, and who would be paying the price. Under human rule, the galaxy was more stable and prosperous than it had ever been. And if some species missed their former independence, they had only themselves to blame for the choices that had led to this new order. The prey had become the predator, and the galaxy was learning to live with the consequences of underestimating the patience of humanity.